A former police officer who was a serial scammer tenant and for decades screwed landlords out of tens of thousands of dollars was finally convicted for the fraud. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's an update to a story that I covered a while back about a police officer up in Massachusetts who just happens to be a serial scammer, okay? The worst kind of scammer, too. A scammer tenant, one who screws landlords out of money, has no intention of ever paying them back, and then just moves on and then does the same thing to another landlord and another landlord and another landlord. Meanwhile, this guy was making six figures at his police officer job, okay? So it's not like he needed the money and was unable to pay the rent because he had no good job and no income. No, this guy was making good money and decided to screw the landlords over anyway. So he is the worst type of scammer, okay? One who has no need to scam, but does it anyway. Almost like a kleptomaniac, one who has no need to steal and is stealing stuff for no reason, okay? It's like a psychological problem. But anyway, when the news media brought this whole story to light, guess what? All of a sudden, he felt pressure from his job for, cheating all these landlords out of their money, and he quickly retired. So fortunately, he's not a cop anymore. But then, he started facing criminal charges, and he's just been convicted. It's good news. Good news that a person like this is going to finally get a criminal record, okay? Because some people, they don't deserve to wear the badge, okay? They dishonor the badge. And I'm one of those people who says, never ever stand up and defend somebody who is a scumbag, okay? If a person is a scumbag, just because they wear a badge, they don't deserve respect. They don't deserve any sort of honor. They need to be cast out from the law enforcement community, okay? We don't need to stand behind that kind of person ever, because they make us all look bad. And, I'm saying this as a law enforcement officer in case you're watching this video and you don't know what I do as a full-time job. I'm a landlord, of course, right? But I also work full-time in law enforcement. That's what I do, to make the grand majority of my income. And so, yeah, it's bothers me when I see a person and they're a cop and they dishonor the badge, by stealing, scamming, cheating, breaking the law themselves. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Are you, surprised that a person who is a police officer would do this sort of thing? Okay, now, don't worry about offending me. I know there's a lot of people who don't like cops, okay? And that's not my concern. I make myself, I act with integrity, and I realize that there are good and bad to every single profession out there, including good and bad landlords, and we've talked about that before as well. So all I ask is that you have an open mind and that you try to judge each person as an individual and not just paint everyone with the same stroke and say, oh well, all cops are bad, or just like I would never say all landlords are bad, okay? So anyway, let me get into this article. It's an update, so I've already told part of the story, but maybe we can go over the details of the story once again. This article is coming from NBCBoston.com, and it says, ex-Stoneham cop who stiffed landlords avoids prison time at sentencing. Then Detective Sergeant Robert Kennedy's 20-year history of evictions and unpaid judgments was uncovered in an NBC 10 Boston investigation in February. So yeah, about almost a year ago, they uncovered that this guy, was doing this over basically his entire career, not paying his rent, going through all these evictions, owing landlords tens of thousands of dollars. And this guy's a cop, okay? And he shouldn't have been wearing a badge, okay? But anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. A former Stoneham, Massachusetts police detective with a history of evictions and unpaid civil judgments has avoided prison time after pleading guilty to wire fraud in federal court in September. At a hearing in Boston Thursday morning, Judge Denise Casper imposed a sentence of 2 years of probation with 90 days of home confinement and location monitoring for Robert Kennedy, whose career of more than 20 years with the Stoneham Police Department came to an abrupt end once the pattern of behavior was exposed. So yeah, the guy, he didn't have to do any prison time, okay? But, I'm a federal law enforcement officer, so these kind of sentencings, they're common. It still is a felony, though. So he has a felony conviction on his record. And so, he's not that old, even though he is retired, right? I believe he's, maybe late 40s or 50, but early 50s. But, so, he theoretically could have, still wanted to go work in some other sort of position. That's going to make this a lot more difficult. And apparently he doesn't own a home because he's been renting for 20 plus years. So, if he still is a renter, it can make it a lot more difficult for him to find housing. And, just everyone knowing that he's the fraud. That's what I like. Just paint this guy with the stroke. You are a scumbag. This is horrible. This is horrible kind of stuff here. And I'm glad that he is finally going to face the consequences of his actions. This is what he deserves. And, no sympathy whatsoever for any hard times he's going through, because he could have potentially destroyed the finances, the financial security of landlords. And, he's took their money. He took it. He stole it from them. And that's just wrong. And everyone knows it. Today's sentence should send a clear message. No one is above the law, Acting U.S. Attorney Joshua Levy said in a statement. We remain steadfast in our commitment to hold accountable those who exploit their positions and engage in fraudulent activities that compromise the very principles they are sworn to uphold. In February, an NBC Boston 10 investigation detailed how court records showed the detective sergeant had a pattern of not paying landlords the monthly rent stretching back 2 decades, including a property owned by an elderly couple in Woburn. We reported how, in recent years, housing court records show Kennedy and his girlfriend racked up more than $50,000 in unpaid rent while being evicted from apartment complexes in Stoneham and Reading. During that 3-year period, salary records we obtained reveal Kennedy had earned more than $500,000 as a police officer. So yeah, let's think about that for a minute, okay? 3-year period, earned $500,000 as a police officer. I mean, this guy was making, $166,000 a year on average? $166,000. Now I know that's not going to go as far in Massachusetts, which is a very expensive state, as other places, but that's not chump change either, okay? That is a good deal of money, and he should have been able to pay his rent, but he did not. And if I remember correctly, he actually used some of the COVID-19 pandemic eviction restrictions to his benefit so that he would not have to pay. What a ridiculous joke all of this has become, okay? Where someone was able to take advantage of the laws that shouldn't have been in place in the first place and screw people out of this much money. 50 grand is a lot of money to be screwing people out of. Prior to the hearing, sentencing memorandums reviewed by NBC 10 Boston gave clues for the first time about where Kennedy was spending his money. According to federal prosecutors' review of Kennedy's financial records, there were unexplained cash withdrawals and spending at expensive restaurants, vacations, and casinos. And the defendant's crime was not simply a matter of financial irresponsibility. It was a premeditated gambit, one that he pulled off by using his position as a Stoneham police detective, stated the memorandum of prosecutors who requested a 90-day prison term. In his sentencing argument, Kennedy's attorney, Brad Bailey, also referenced excessive gambling and said his client would be willing to attend a self-help group as a requirement of his probation. Yeah, sounds like he had a gambling problem, okay? This is very common, a lot more common than people realize, okay? So, he's going to, the casinos, he's blowing all his cash. Yeah, you can make 166 grand a year and still be dead broke if you have a gambling problem. And, I say this from a position of knowledge because when I was in my early 20s, I gambled way way too much. Okay, we used to go every single weekend to the casinos in Kansas City where I lived, and if it wasn't for the fact that I was able to get out of it, I could have been put in the exact same position as this police officer here, where I am blowing away every single penny that I ever earned on something that is completely useless, something that destroys you from the inside out. And now you look and you see, okay, your gambling addiction has cost you your job, your good name, everything. And I mean, that's a horrible position to be in. So yeah, you're a scumbag, right? But you know what? There is redemption in this. If you can get rid of that gambling problem and then pay the people who you took money from, pay them back the money that you owe them and beg for their forgiveness. Okay? And maybe some of them will forgive you. Okay, that's the only way you can make this right at this point. But anyway, I'm on a rant. It's good to see that this guy was convicted. It's good to see that he's getting what he deserves. And, I feel bad for those landlords out there who got taken advantage of by this scumbag.